your breaking news and weather authority. This is 13 WHAM News this morning on Rochester's CW in high definition.
Thank you so much. We are really honored to have with us the man who is number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list. We're talking about Gregg Lederman. He is author of the book Engaged, Outbehave Your Competition and Create Customers for Life. He is a Rochester guy who is a CEO of Brand Integrity, business and marketing strategy expert. All right, so you've got this best-selling book that I know a lot of local companies are having their employees read. You're talking about employees and how to get employees, not just employees, but how businesses can outshine the competition by having engaged employees. How does a company do that? And that may be the most loaded question I could ever throw you to start off the interview. But let's start with that. How, can a company do that with its employees?
Well, first of all, they need to look at engagement as a productivity strategy and a customer experience strategy. And like any strategy, you need a system to implement it. Companies have operational systems, marketing systems, finance systems. You need what we call a living the brand system. And it starts with defining what are our values, what is our brand from a behavioral perspective. Then the best of the best become masterful at helping managers and leaders remind the workforce of that through the hiring practices, performance reviews, strategic recognition. And lastly, you've got to measure it. Any system, you've got to measure how it's working. So you have to quantify your culture and the customer experience and start to compare that information that you gather to the financial results that are driving the success of your business.
Right. So you can look at what's going on underneath the surface of the brand, if you will, to see how that relates or correlates to the end product, which is hopefully profit for your company. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you define the behaviors behind your brand, then you can measure how consistently those behaviors are happening.
We've heard that there is an employee crisis, an employee engagement crisis. In fact, 2/3, and this was a study that came out, I think, earlier this year, 2/3 of employees who were recently surveyed say that they are actively disengaged.
Yeah, they're either disengaged or actively disengaged.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And it's been going on for such a long period of time.
Is it people that just go into work day in and day out, just do their job, punch the clock if they have to do that, and then they hightail it out of there?
There's a lot of that. The book's called Engaged, and we define engaged as you're motivated and committed to act in the best interest of your company. And a lot of people aren't engaged, and a lot of that starts with leadership, not having the emotional toolbox filled with things that they can do to talk about the values, talk about the brand, make it part of the conversation so people understand how they can deliver that day in and day out. And that's what creates that environment that is motivating to people. And if you don't have it, if you just think you're going to provide cash bonuses or rewards, tchotchkes, trinkets, that's not going to motivate people.
Wait, so a trip to Hawaii is not going to motivate employees to work harder?
Absolutely not. But I mean, it's a nice compliment to a living the brand system in place. I'm not saying abolish all rewards, but no, what you got to think about what really motivates people. It's, do I feel respected and appreciated? Do I have a good relationship with my boss? And do I feel like I'm making a difference? Am I making progress in my work? And if those are missing, you're not going to have an engaged workforce.
But that puts the onus on an employer to have frequent meetings with employees or regular meetings with employees to say, hey, this is how you're doing, or you know what, this is maybe where you need some improvement. So that puts a lot of pressure on the employee too, doesn't it? Because they have to do their homework and guide the employee along to a degree. They have to understand
what it is, but you're expecting managers to actually manage the experience, manage by the values, manage the brand of the company. That's part of their job. If you just see your job as a taskmaster all day, well, you're not going to have a living the brand culture. You're not going to have a best place to work type environment, and therefore we as consumers are going to suffer because we won't have a great experience consistently with your organization.
And nowadays, given the consumer experience being so social, customers are quick to criticize companies on social media.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I've been vocal sometimes about my complaint about a particular company, but you know what? I've certainly gotten results in the sense that those companies realize that I'm an upset customer, and then they engage me, they deal with me right away.
Well, just like in other parts of our world here, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening. Social media is starting that, is fueling that. If you don't have a really consistently good customer experience, then people are going to hear about that, and you're going to suffer from lower customer loyalty. And those who are willing to put in the right systems and make engaging employees and designing and delivering the customer experience a priority, they're going to sell more and more often.
The financial downturn really made companies have to decide what's important, and that included sometimes having to let people go, and they needed to reduce their upfront costs. How could they focus on any of this stuff when they were just trying to keep their head above water, really? But some did, and they're still here today, right? I mean, are those the companies that actually managed to get ahead by adhering to some of these values, to the company's values, even though they had to make some difficult decisions?
I would suggest so. I mean, you're right on. I mean, during 2009, 2010, into 2011, companies successfully decreased their overhead costs. They increased their cost savings, but they also increased the stress and the burnout of their best people. And now you've got a workforce that, I think I saw a stat recently, 37% of the workforce believes that they're doing the work of two people. I mean, it's people feel stressed out, burned out, and you fuel that with lack of management's ability to truly create that environment where people feel motivated and committed consistently. It fuels this engagement crisis where, as you mentioned, 2/3 of the workforce are not engaged or actively disengaged.
Okay, the great thing is that we're going to get a chance, we're going to take a break, and we're going to get a chance to talk to Gregg a little bit later on. We're going to continue the conversation because I want to go further into this. Again, the book is called Engaged, Out-Behavior Competition and Create Customers for Life. And the great thing is, he's from Rochester. We're going to get a chance to pick his brain coming up next. Stay with us. We just can't stop talking. Gregg and I were over here. We're talking about author Gregg Lederman. He is the author of a new book. It's called Engaged, and let me get this correct here. It's Engaged, Out-Behave Your Competition and Create Customers for Life. And you certainly have a lot of local companies' attention, some of whom have their employees reading your book right now. You are the CEO of Brand Integrity, a business and marketing strategy expert. You're an adjunct professor at the University of Rochester. So you know a lot about what you're talking about. And in the book, you discuss having employees who are engaged and why that matters to a company's bottom line.
Yeah, and not only why it matters, but how do you prove it? How do you measure whether...
How do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can quantify your culture, and a lot of people don't think that they can. They're still doing these outdated and fairly ineffective employee satisfaction studies. And that you can't quantify the results of those studies in a way that shows correlation or at least a very strong connection to your metrics that matter most in your company. So in the book, I write about how to look at behavior consistency to see where are you living your values, where are you living your brand, where are you not. And we also introduce something called the Engaged Index, which anyone can get for free. It's at engagedindex.com, and any individual can go report on how engaged they are at work confidentially, connected to their company results. You can forward it around, and you can get a score for your company on how engaged your workforce is. It's 4 simple questions, provides an incredibly accurate picture of how engaged groups of people are in a business.
Any company can ask their employees these 4 questions, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, and they're 4 very well-designed questions. Remember, we said earlier, engaged is when you're motivated and committed to act in the best interest of your company. So the way the Engaged Index works is you answer 4 questions. One is on discretionary effort. How likely are you to go above and beyond if given the opportunity? You score it as between a 0 and a 10. Another question gets at retention, which is a measure of engagement. How likely are you to stay with this organization if offered a similar job elsewhere for slightly higher pay? Someone's willing to stay with your company for just, and they wouldn't leave for just slightly higher pay, they're most likely motivated and committed to act in the best interest of your company. And the other 2 questions are the recommend questions. How likely are you to recommend as a place to work? How likely are you to recommend the products and services? When you take those 4 questions, which all hit at motivation and commitment to act in the best interest of a company, they all hit on that at slightly different angles. When you do that and you use the formula I provide in the book, you can tell with incredible accuracy how engaged groups of people are.
Interesting. So any company, again, what's the website people can go to?
Engagedindex.com.
Okay, so employers, if you take a hint from Gregg and give your employees this question. The last 2 I find are often questions in exit interviews. How likely are you to recommend, or when you buy a product, how likely are you to recommend this product to your friends and neighbors? And it's like, or you don't want to hear that when the employee's on the way out. You want to hear that when they're working with you. I want to know if my employees
are advocates of our company. Do they think it's a great place to work? Are they proud of the product and service we have? Or would they proactively recommend it? And if those scores are high, then those employees are relatively engaged. And here's the beauty of the engaged score that you get. you can compare that to financial results, no matter what industry you're in. If you're a bank, you can look at your loan production and how much are you selling in loans. If you're a retail store, you can look at your Engage score and compare that to your revenue, or you can look at cost reduction and cost avoidance type metrics. Our clients are comparing their Engage scores to absenteeism of employees, safety issues, turnover of employees, as well as sales, as well as referrals of new customers. There's a number of different ways to quantify your culture.
This isn't just feel-good talk that Gregg is bringing up here, and those who dismiss it are missing the point. The book is called Engaged: Out-Behavior Competition and Create Customers for Life, but I have a feeling that you may also create employees for as long as they're able to work, and that's also a great thing too. Engaged employees, but they create engaged customers. And there's some video we have of you lecturing. You do this, of course, all over, and that's what you do. Thank you so much for imparting some of your wisdom on us. We really appreciate it. Gregg's book is #5 on the New York Times bestseller list, by the way. Not just feel-good talk. It's feel-good talk that people across the country are taking notice of. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's really great meeting you.
It's great being here.
Thanks a lot. All right, we'll be right back after this.